It's a partnership that's grown with the city of Fort Worth. For 50 years, the city's been working to help make the place we call home better than ever. HUD oversees federal funds that are used for local government. You may have heard of Community Development Block Grants, also known as CDBG. This federal funding is for local units of government to spend in their neighborhoods. The spending of these federal funds is guided by a consolidated plan that's created by cities and approved by HUD every 5 years. HUD designed the consolidated plan process to be collaborative so that a community can establish a unified vision for housing and neighborhood community development. Essentially, that money goes to help fix up neighborhoods and for public services. Right now, the city is planning for its next 5-year consolidated plan, and we want your help. How should we spend the roughly $13.5 million a year? Do you want more light poles for a safer street? Do you want more sidewalks to get to the grocery store? Or do you want more parks? How about a fire station? The choice is yours. You see, that money goes into several buckets: the Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships Program, Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Program. These buckets then pour money into ways to make your neighborhood a better place to live. The City of Fort Worth's Neighborhood Services Department meets with community stakeholders like yourselves, local business owners, and everyone in between. This Fort Worth Consolidated Plan will cover HUD programs from October of this year till the end of September 2028. In the past, the city has used HUD grant funding for projects in Fort Worth, like the Priority Repair Program, to fix homes. So let's look towards the future. Community stakeholders, business owners, and residents of Fort Worth are encouraged to provide input and comments to help with identifying these priority needs. This will include attending community meetings, contacting city staff, and completing surveys. How would you want to see that money being spent? As a Fort Worth resident, what would you identify as a priority need? Click the link on this video to fill out the survey, or come to the screen, pull out your phone's camera, and hold it on this QR code until there's a link to direct you to the survey. If you want to meet with your city council member in person to discuss further, we have a list of the meetings happening in your neighborhood. Please join us at one of our upcoming community meetings at a location near you, wherever you live, work, or play. Meetings are scheduled during the month of April in the Fort Worth Council districts. We encourage each resident to attend their local neighborhood meeting, but each meeting is open to all residents. Let's work together as a Fort Worth community to shape the future of our city and how we plan to use our HUD dollars. Thank you for helping build a better.
I'm Sharon Berkeley, Redevelopment Planning Manager for the Neighborhood Services Department. Thank you all for coming out to the first of several district meetings that we'll have regarding our consolidated plan. Before we get started further in our program.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see you here this evening, taking time out of your busy schedules to come and sit with the city of Fort Worth. I do want to encourage you that meetings like this is very important. We talk about getting your input and how we affect and how we move in the city of Fort Worth. How we fix the streets right here on Berry between Mitchell and 287, how we take care of Riverside and Berry, how we do things in our neighborhoods. And so one of the things that this city council has been fighting for, anytime we ask for public engagement, we have asked the city to make sure they go to each council district so it's close to your home, close to your neighborhood, as well as it brings the city out to see how your neighborhood looks. And so they can not only just hear, but they can also see what you're talking about. So tonight is your opportunity to tell us, the city of Fort Worth, what it is that you want to see in your neighborhood, how we spend these dollars that's coming up in the next 5 years. So don't be shy. I know you're not, because you never are. But if there are things that you don't get answered today, feel free to contact my office, Sally Maxon and Jasmine Tate. It's about phones and emails to take your calls and concerns. I will tip out here going to Holland Hills Neighborhood Association this evening. But I just wanted to greet you and thank you for coming out and thank the city of Fort Worth for doing this.
Thank you. As part of other introductions, I want to let you know, as part of my position with the city, I serve as a staff liaison for our Community Development Council, which is an advisory board that works with the department in allocating the funds. You do have a person in every district that represents your council district. So tonight I want to introduce the Council Aid District Rep, Ms. Aquanette Crockett.
Good evening. My name is Aquanette Crockett, and I am the representative for District 8 for the CDC. I'm excited to see all of you here. And if you have any questions afterwards, I'll do my best to answer them, and if not, I will direct you to Ms. Sharon. Thank you.
I forgot to introduce our staff. Our Assistant Director, Amy Connolly, is here in the corner, and we have our staff, our neighborhood services staff is there. I won't make y'all say anything. We have staff here, there, in the green shirt. Either, if you can't get to me, talk to one of them. For any questions, any follow-up, anything after this meeting, my cards are on the back table. Feel free to reach out to me, call, email, come down to our office, and we'll be glad to serve you as best as we can. This meeting is for District 8. We have other districts, other meetings throughout the city. You're not restricted to just this one. You can come to any one that you want. It's open. We have in each district, but they're open to all members. And before I introduce our consultant who's going to facilitate from this point forward, we had, I don't know where the things are here. We talked about why we have the districts as they are now and not the new districts. We don't yet have those council members in place, but for the purposes of our consolidated plan and where we're allocating the funds is for the city of Fort Worth, and we're setting program goals and objectives for how we spend the money for the next 5 years, not necessarily where, in which district or which streets or what have you. It's just identifying the programs, whether it's senior services, children, what have you. So I want to clarify that, so it's not tonight or throughout this process of surveys that's limiting or preventing you from speaking your piece within the new council district. So if you're in council district 11 or 10, you'll be represented through our consolidated plan and with allocation of funds. And so with that, James Gillian with the J-Quad Planning Group, who will take the program.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening, everyone. Again, my name is James Gillian. We're going to start with going through a short presentation just to give you the details of where the funding comes from, what the authorized uses of the funds, and then also we want to give your input tonight as to what you see as the priority needs within your district. When we get to the point where we're getting your input for priority needs, I want you to think of it in terms of priority needs citywide, but in particular, one of the reasons that we're holding individual meetings in individual districts is we'd like you to also look at this from the perspective of, given what can be funded, what do you most need within your districts? Even recognizing the fact that all of the uses that are eligible are probably things that most of you would identify as needs. So because there will be limited funds, we want you to tell us what you think the major priorities are for your district, and from you in terms of your own perspective on what's needed, so that we'll have that input as the city makes decisions as to how the funds will actually be expended. So I'm going to go through a presentation that will give you an overview of the funding sources and the amounts and what they can be used for, and then we'll get your input on priority needs. So I'm going to start with the fact that each year Congress appropriates nationwide funding from state called the Consolidated Plan group of funding. It's a national appropriation that Congress appropriates every year, and then by formula, each city that's eligible to receive these funds get their formula share, if you will, of those funds. So the total appropriation is $3.7 billion. That's for the whole country. And it's broken down into the Community Development Block Grant Fund at that $3,777 million nationwide. $2 billion for a home investment partnership, which is primarily for housing-related activities in your communities. And then $86,000, which is designed to address fair housing issues. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but keep in mind that fair housing is more directed toward making sure that people aren't discriminated against and that people are able to participate in the funding sources and housing finance that's available within their community. For Fort Worth itself, based on the formula, so Fort Worth is eligible for both the Consolidated Plan funded programs, including an annual application of Community Development Block Grant, Home, and Emergency Solutions Grant. And then we'll talk about the assessment of fair housing as well. The planning document we're producing that we call the Consolidated Plan, that's the prerequisite document that has to be submitted by the City of Fort Worth in order for the city to be eligible to receive its formula grant. So within the City of Fort Worth, based on that appropriation, Fort Worth will receive $6,994,785 for its Community Development Block Grant Program. It will receive just a little bit over $3,200,000 for its home appropriation. Emergency Solutions Grant addresses needs related to homelessness, and so the city will be receiving $610,543 for that. And then housing opportunities for people with AIDS, HOPWA, as it's called, $2,576,174. And again, the way these numbers are allocated is based on a formula that takes into consideration population, number of housing units, and need within each individual community. The elements of the Consolidated Plan, which we have to produce in order to receive the funds, calls for us to have a citizen participation plan and a process where people throughout the city have an opportunity to give their input as to what they think the primary needs are for these different programs. And also part of the process will be to tell us, based on what has been funded in the past, what works and what doesn't work in your opinion in terms of the priority. There's also a component of a housing market analysis which looks at cost of housing, housing supply within your community, both rental and home ownership. It also addresses housing and homelessness in terms of how much of that issue are you dealing with and exactly who's impacted by homelessness. It addresses the analysis of impediments, which is to identify outright acts of discrimination, but also impediments, things that might be impeding a person's ability to gain housing. So if there's a shortage of rental housing or a shortage of rental housing in a particular price range that meets your needs, then that needs to be addressed in that particular segment. And then the other components on the right-hand side are basically the documentation that the city has to present in order to receive its formula grant. There are 4 different areas for which the city can use that approximately $13 million that it received for the year. They can spend it and allocate it towards housing and housing needs, economic development needs. There's a list of public services, everything from senior services to community services, social services, health, and others. And then they can also allocate funding to public facilities and public infrastructure, things like sidewalk, curb, gutter, street improvements, and those sorts of things. But also mandate that as part of conducting this study and analysis of how they will spend the funds, they've got to take in particular consideration as to the impacts that are occurring for each of these areas where they can expend funds, and then create a strategic plan where it identifies exactly what are the priorities that the city will spend. Because the need always exceeds the amount. $13 million sounds like a lot of dollars, and it is, but there are also a lot more needs within the city, even beyond that 13 million. In order for funding to be allocated to any activity, we have to meet one of these three objectives. It has to either benefit low and moderate income persons, and I'll share with you the income structure that allows people to qualify based on being low and moderate income. Prevention of slum and blighted conditions. So if you've got neighborhoods that are deteriorating, one of the major eligibilities is the ability to try and reinvest and revitalize those areas of your city. And it can also be awarded under the category of meeting or having a particular urgency. An example of the particular urgency where the city is able to allocate funding would be things like if you had tornadoes, or you were impacted by hurricanes, if you were impacted by floods. Most recently, we're all familiar with COVID-19, and there was special appropriations given to the city to assist residents based on COVID-19. It provided things like rental assistance, it provided utility assistance. It also paid for the vaccinations and those sorts of things. So that would be an example of that third category. As I said, in order for dollars to be allocated to an activity, the individuals who benefit and the households that benefit, they have to be in a category eligible based on being 80% of the area median income in order to qualify. Now what that means is if you're a family or a household of one, you can earn up to $50,650 and still be eligible for funding. I'll give you an example. If we as a city have a rental or a homeowner rehabilitation program, so some of you may have participated in the city's either rental rehab or their homeowner rehab programs, money to add ramps to your house if you're disabled, those kinds of things. The eligibility was for a one-person household, you couldn't earn any more than $50,650, all the way down to 5 or 10 people in your household, and you could only earn $78,100 as a family of 5. Now, I poured this out in particular because when the city announces funding for these programs, I want everyone to keep in mind the annual income limits, because a lot of people eliminate themselves from being eligible for these programs, when in fact, as you can see, based on the income for a 2-person household, you would still be earning a living wage, if you will, and still be eligible for these programs. So it's not simply a person has to be without income or at the lowest level of income. It is a program which can benefit a wide range of people. So we urge you to make sure you keep that in mind. Yes, sir.
When you say income, pensions, retirement amounts, what is?
Yeah, it includes total income for your household. So if you have 2 people working, then it's both persons' income. If you had 2 persons who were earning Social Security benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, any of the senior benefits, Social Security, and so forth, then that total income. If you have adult dependents or children living in the household who are earning income, it's the total income for the household.
Is the adjusted income or the gross income?
It's your total gross income. Okay, next up. So that $13 million can be expended. First of all, the city reserves 20% of the grant to actually administer the grant and also report to HUD in terms of it meeting the qualifications and the requirements. Up to 15% of the grant can be expended on public services. So public services, again, are those things like child care and senior services, veteran services, and those kinds of things. And then the other 65% can be spent on any eligible need, whether it be infrastructure, housing, and I'll go through some of those a little later in the presentation. So remember, there's an annual allocation of funds. We're producing 3 documents. First of all, a consolidated plan, which tells HUD what we plan how we plan to utilize the funds over the next 5-year period, and we provide the documentation and justification in terms of population needs, housing conditions, and so forth in order to qualify. And then the second plan is that annual action plan, which details how the city plans to spend the $13 million that it will receive. And then finally, the third component is the analysis of impediments or fair housing, which identifies any barriers, both those that we will address and those that remain issues that we need to address. So the consolidated plan includes, this is your community engagement process. There will be other meetings designed to allow people throughout the city to give their input on both needs and also in terms of how they think the funds should be expended. And it will include a market analysis that demonstrates to HUD that we have the needs within the city, who's eligible, the number of people that are eligible. We'll also address the needs relative to housing and homelessness specifically, because that's one of the requirements. And then the non-housing community development activities are things like infrastructure. So you see street improvements and sidewalks, curb, gutter, those kinds of things.
James?
Yes.
The community facilities, do you take an average or mean of the income of the area for that street or facility? Does the area have to qualify rather than individuals qualify? For a facility, it would be the street or whatever. Does that area have to have an average income that would satisfy?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So there are 2 ways in which the city can invest funds. One is if it's an area benefit. There we take the census tract or the block group where the particular infrastructure is going to be funded. Let's say you have a community center, or maybe you have a playground, or you might have streets that are being resurfaced, or sidewalks, curb and gutter. That would be considered an eligible benefit. So in order for the city to invest in that particular area, 51% of the people would have to be at 80% or below the median income. Now there are some instances where we direct a benefit to individuals. Home repair would be an example. If you own a home, there are programs that the city has operated previously where it will provide a forgivable loan that you're able to use to hire a contractor to repair your home. Then that individual household has to qualify for that particular benefit. Then the assessment of fair housing, as I mentioned before, it's designed to identify, first of all, outright acts of discrimination that's occurring within the community, whether it's in lending or whether it's a person attempting to rent and so forth. But it also takes into consideration a lack of services that exist within the community that might be impeding a person's ability to get housing. So what we have to do is establish the priority needs for housing, economic development, infrastructure, and public services. Next one. To give you an idea, under housing, typically it involves housing rehabilitation, it involves housing development, where there are new housing development being produced that people can rent or own. Housing assistance, which you probably are familiar with, the programs that provide down payment and closing cost assistance to individuals attempting to purchase homes. And then it also allows the city to use funding for demolition, removal of slum and blighted conditions, and replace it with under public services, there's a whole array of services, everything from youth and senior services, homelessness, domestic violence, healthcare, meals, transportation. All of those are eligible. The city gets to decide exactly which activity they'll actually budget and spend money on. Then there's the non-housing community development, which involves public facilities, community facilities, infrastructure, parks and recreation, and other facilities within the community. Economic development is also eligible. The city can elect to structure programs that will provide an array of benefits, everything from technical assistance and funding to small businesses to actual activities that will create jobs, create income, and develop the workforce within the city. The city does not have to obligate its fund to every activity that is eligible. That's why we go through the process of asking the community what are the priority needs, so that they can take that into consideration as they make decisions ultimately as to how the $13 million needs to be. I'll close with just a note, if you go back to the previous slide, that you are actually the first district meeting that we're hosting. I want to emphasize, if you know people who aren't able to make this district meeting, you can attend any of the meetings that we will have throughout the month of April, even if it's in another council district. And you can also participate by completing the survey and the other information that we're asking. Yes, ma'am.
How do you account for, say, up to 5, 7, 9? How do you account for my comments in the district?
So your comments, while we'd like you to give us comments, for example, one of the reasons we hold it in this district, and you'll be asked in a few minutes to give us what you think the priority needs are, because we want to know what people who attended within this district thought the priority needs would be. However, we'll still take that citywide, regardless of which meeting you attended, and we'll also tell you what the city as a whole has indicated. Now, also keep in mind that when you complete the information that we're going to ask you for in a few minutes, that we are able to tell, exactly what people within this district, indicated were the priority needs. And then also, there'll be people in your district that will hopefully be taking the survey, and it also will be coded such that we would know that they were residents of your district when they responded. So basically, we're going through the public engagement process now. There'll also be other engagements for industry and others. And then finally, there'll be some specialized stakeholder engagement where public housing residents with the Fort Worth Housing Authority and others will be able to participate in addition to if they participated in the district. So just to give you an idea of this process, we're mandated by HUD to submit our plan by August 15th of the year. We're going through February through April, the various meetings, the kickoff activities, and getting input. The draft plan will be drafted and made public to the community sometime in May and June. And you'll have an opportunity to see that plan, be able to read it, and then give us comments on the plan itself. And then finally, that plan will go to the City Council in July, and they will make a final decision on the plan. They will hold a public hearing at that time. So even if you've already given your comments, when they host that public hearing at the City Council meeting, you can even send in your written comments, or you'll be able to attend in person and actually give your input. So you'll have that one final opportunity to voice your opinion in terms of what the needs should be. There'll also be an opportunity in the planning process to identify some strategic areas where, in addition to the $13 million that the city receives, and even with those funds, there's often some competitive grants that the city will apply for, and they've been very competitive. you all probably have heard of the work that they're doing in Stop 6 and other districts where they actually got beyond this allocation of annual funds. They got a special allocation for Stop 6, Las Vegas Trail, and other areas. So this process is also used so that when HUD announces in the future those grants being available, the city can readily apply for it and hopefully be successful as they've been in the past.
Well, what happens to District 11 and 10? And where are the specifics for those two districts?
So if you're currently in one of the new districts where you'll be selecting your new council member in May, two things that you need to keep in mind. You can still attend and voice your opinion in the district that you're currently in. We do plan to try and have in May a similar meeting to this once we know who the leadership and the people, and notify the people within the boundaries of the new districts. So you will have an opportunity at that time as well. But for now, we're asking people to take advantage of being able to voice their opinion and to note their priorities for that area, even in its current district.
Okay, follow up on that one, because there's a high probability that there will be runoffs in both of the new districts. I can't see that there would be a person elected right off the bat. It could be very long. So that means that would go on over into June. What happens then to those folks?
Well, I think we're still planning to try and have a meeting in those districts. We'll just have to make a decision if that occurs in terms of runoffs. There may not be an elected person for those districts, but that will be us from making the presentation in the area and allowing people to still come if they haven't had a chance to attend any of the other meetings. But we'll have to make that call.
Just trying to figure out the inclusivity of the process.
For now, if you could help us spread the word, for now, please come to the meetings in your current district as configured, and keep in mind you can go to any district meeting.
Right.
You're not restricted right even now, because if you wanted to go to another district, the main thing is getting your input so that we're not totally making, as consultants and the staff, totally making decisions as to what you think the needs are in the community. So that's the more important part, that you attend one of those meetings. Yes, sir.
When the decisions are made as to how the money is to be allocated, finally, is there going to be an actual citizen sitting in on that decision making, other than just a survey being taken?
Okay. Let me make sure I understand your question. Okay, so you're saying like right now we're identifying our goals.
Right.
That's what we're doing with the common plan as well as our assessment for housing. But once we receive the allocation of the funding, how will that be determined? Is that the question?
Is there going to be a person like me or anybody else in here sitting at the table when the decisions are made as to how that money goes out?
Yes, that's what our Community Development Council is. It's an advisory board of citizens. Yes, Ms. Crockett is the District 8 representative. We have 8 other members that meet. Those are public meetings as well. Community Development Council, the second Wednesday of each month, that works with us to make those decisions. And we do have, James will have other meetings. We'll also have a public hearing in the month of July that you're welcome to come in when we are developing that plan as far as allocations, to come in and offer comment, as well as the August 8th City Council will also have another public hearing.
So that still leaves, I'm sorry.
I was making sure.
Are you sure?
Okay.
And I didn't say the name of Rita Henry.
Yes, ma'am.
That still begs the question, though, that citizen board does not include the representation from the district.
Yes, ma'am.
the two new districts. So how do you
How do you
plan?
reconcile them?
Pardon?
Yes, like how we reconcile the new members with the current members.
Or how do you plan to do that?
I will say it's still developing. This is kind of an unprecedented time
Right.
that we're doing our consolidated plan at the same time that we're having the council members. Normally that would happen, like if it happened last year, then they would already be there. So we're working through it. So please help your comments so we can take that back to our leadership as well as the council on how we can do it. We are restricted though on a finite calendar by the federal government.
Right.
And August 15th is our date. If we don't submit August 15th, we get nothing.
Right.
So we're within that. That's our timeline parameters. What we would like to do when we have our public hearing in July is to have that, or plan to have in one of the other districts, like James said, to have a public hearing in June. What I'm reluctant to do is to wait for all the input, which is why we want, and when we started, we had to make a decision to go ahead and have all of the meetings in current districts. I will say it's a 5-year strategic plan. The most critical part right now is not where, but what we will be funding. The where comes each year. So to start off with this, it will be like a home repairs are citywide. If it's senior services, they're citywide. If it's children, youth, it's citywide. Now, if it becomes streets, it becomes just streets, not necessarily allocated to a specific area at the time that we submit to the federal government. Those come later, so it would be after that.
I think I hear equity because.
Yes, we're pushing for that most definitely.
Right. I'm moving from District 5, in which I have always been a citizen of District 5, to District 8. My neighbor back here will she was District 5, now she'll be part of the new District 11. But because my neighbor here.
Okay, so you're going from 5 to 11, and things from 5 to 8. Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate your answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see if I understand.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
We're both old city employees, so, some folks familiar with this process. I had to do an annual plan every year.
Yes. And we
The
still
5-year plan was just kind of what we intend to do. It's rather general, but the specific is on a yearly basis.
Yes, sir.
And that's where the decisions are made by who gets what and when. That's where the rubber meets the road. And that's the process I was concerned about. Now, I ain't trying to act like I was somebody, but, I was a grant manager too. And a lot of critical decisions are made.
Yes, sir.
Which individuals or organizations get money, what the criteria is going to be, what the performance expectations are going to be, the evaluations, etc. Does the citizens have any input in that process in the year-to-year basis? What organizations are funded? Or are there organizations like the Y or Boys Club and Girls Club? They're just always getting an allocation. You can almost block that off.
No, sir, that's not the way. I don't know how long ago you were, but that's not the case at this time. We're actually concurrently going through our request for proposal process now. Yes, you are invited to provide your input on that. We have public hearings. We have actually have one next week at our CDC meeting on the input prior to the submission of the action plan, and there'll be another one in May and June for input on the specific individual annual action plan. And we do an action plan every year of the 5 years, and there is opportunity for citizen participation. It's actually required, and so we have notices. You'll see notices in the Star Telegram, you'll see them in the Levita, you'll see them on our social media pages and what have you, inviting participation. It can be in person, it can be by email, phone call, letter, but we do a
I'm
number.
gonna make a comment, I'm gonna shut up, but I'm a Baptist preacher, so you know we lie about shutting up. I found out about this meeting this morning when I was at the Y in the Levita. And I called Neighborhood Association president, and she called some other people. Generally, this was not well publicized.
No, that's a
It
good one.
really wasn't.
Right.
I don't know why, but at least you could have contacted neighborhood associations that are registered with the city.
Exactly.
There's better ways, because we would have a whole lot more attendance. And this is a good attendance, good turnout. It would be much
Short
larger
notice.
if the notification had been more broadly
Right.
distributed.
I agree, because I only found out, I was reading it at 4:30 with my neighbor, he said, hey, you know about this?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
And all the persons that have input and opportunity to make that change are present, so they'll take that back.
Right.
And feedback to make sure we work on
Do
that.
you guys hear us?
And we're live streaming, so yes.
Are you listening?
Yes, they hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, and then Ms. Hunter.
Okay. My name is Robert Jackson, and I'm one of the ones also that's going from District 8 to District 11, which one of the things I found out from when I received my voter registration card, which it had it on there. As far as this meeting is concerned, I found out about it from the email blast that the city sent out in their weekly things, but I read it today. So I'm not sure when it was sent out, but I read it today. And that's how I found out about this. But addressing, just for clarification, from the questions that they're asking about who has input and who has the final, and from the answers that I'm hearing, is to say that just during the meeting times is when the citizens have input, but come whenever the final meeting is in City Hall, I guess it is, that's where the final, that the city council members will make the final decision there, but up until then, the citizens have input.
Yes. And at the council meeting as well.
And then, but the final decision is on the council person.
Yes. And I will add too, as we allocate us in the plans with the action plans can be amended. We have made changes, we make changes throughout. So it's not like once it's in there, it can't be changed. So keep that in mind as well.
But there's not going to be a citizen involved in the final decision. That's based on the council.
Well, the council has to vote and approve it.
Right.
Before we can submit it to them.
Right.
Yes. If they take all of the.
That's the 5-year plan and the annual plans
Yes, this is every year.
every year.
But that is taken in consideration with what we funnel up and our representative on the board, if she is listening to us tonight.
Correct. Correct.
Yes, that they will make their public like that.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
She promises she's listening.
She's listening, I'm listening as well. I promise. Ms. Hunter?
Okay, my concern is when you brought up the information about the homeless, and you know one of my pet peeves is the homeless. They need to get $1 million and we got homeless in every community. So that's a shame of this way. We need to up the homeless. Thank you. And I will write.
Okay, so just keep in mind that there are different levels or areas where you can actually give input. So don't forget that there's a citywide survey where you get to provide that input, if you will. These meetings, at the council meetings, so take every advantage to give that input. And to encourage, most of all, encourage people in the area that don't come to the meetings. This is an opportunity to go. We're going to move into this segment where you've just been handed a little device. We're going to, everyone should have a little, what we call a clicker device. And so I'm going to turn it over to Robert Williams and Robert Joyner. They're going to walk you through a little exercise. But the main thing is that we're going to give you a series of ways in which the city has expended funds in the past, both some in your district, but some in other districts throughout the city. What we're going to be asking you to do is to tell us whether or not you think these kinds of activities are a priority, and second of all, in some instances, is this a priority within your district? Because this is our level to our effort to get your direct input, and we'll be able to share with you in real time the results of that. So, Robin, I'm going to turn it over to you, and Robert, whoever is.
Thank you, James. Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Williams. I'm part of the study team here, and we're just going to take you through an instant polling exercise. And really what this is meant to do is to supplement the survey that we have that's online. And again, you can take a handout with you and hold your phone up and take it on your phone. We've got computers over there that offer a much more extensive survey. But this is just to get a feel for what your opinions are in the room. Some of the projects that you hear about you'll be familiar with, but really we're presenting some of the projects just so you can understand example projects or sample projects that might be something that you want to see in your neighborhood and community. So what we'd like to do is just, again, have you in the thinking mode of community needs, and we're going to ask you to take the devices, and Robert's going to give you some sample questions so we can test out that the devices are working. You're really going to be using the first three buttons, 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C. There's really just 3 answers that you can give in this process. And so if you'll indulge us for a few minutes, we've got about 11 questions for you, where we're going to be asking you about what you feel about the level of priority in terms of whether you think what we're presenting to you is a high priority, a medium priority, or moderate priority, or a low priority need for your community. So we're going to test out our equipment first, and then we're going to start with the first question. Okay, so our first question is, how many people do you think live in Fort Worth? This is just a test question, just so we can make sure our devices are working in the room. So you can press letter A on your device if you feel that it's about 900,000, over 900,000. B for 508,000 roughly, and C about 1,000,005. So once you get your answers in there, then we'll know that it's final and ready to go. That will tell us that our equipment is working, and we'll be ready to start with the real questions.
So it looks like 13. Very good.
Okay, so it looks like 54% said 900,008, 469, and the correct answer is A. All right, good. Everybody who answered A, good for you. All right, so let's begin with our first question for you, and I'll read it aloud. And if you have any questions about this project, let's hold your questions, all of these questions, until afterwards. The Fort Worth Neighborhood Services team can answer more questions about these if you're curious, and they've also got a table in the back so they can talk to you more about it. But let's see if we can get through our 11 questions. So, Campfire First Texas provides an after-school program which focuses on social emotional learning. It includes STEAM, and that is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math activities, which also include reading and literacy development in the community. And apparently this is run out of several different schools, after-school programs. And so what we'd like to know from you all is, what priority level should a program similar to this be considered in your neighborhood or community? Do you feel an after-school program such as this would be a high priority, a moderate priority, or a low priority? So again, choosing A, B, or C, what would be your selection on a program similar to this in the community as far as a community need? Just a few seconds here while it calculates. Nobody is watching. You get all the votes in. Okay, So 83% of you consider a program such as after-school programs to be very important in your community. And
Just one quick thing, the remote select the answer, kind of really push down on it, just so you may hit it too softly, you may think got an answer, and it doesn't show. So I'm able to see we roughly have about 13 total, and so what I'm checking for is to make sure that all 13 get answered. So and so press each answer very friendly.
So Robert, you want to press it again, press that button again, just
Yeah, you got one missing. Yeah.
one more vote.
you press it the same, and it's still, it's just record over, just press it. Everybody can press that button just one more time, hard, so that,
The little green light is supposed to show up, right?
Yeah.
So that's an indication that you have
That we've got it all.
Okay.
adequately.
Great, all right, so yeah, we're still at 83%, considering it a high priority, and about 17% of you consider this to be a moderate level priority. And just to let you know, we're going to ask the same set of questions in every meeting, and this entire meeting presentation will be the same in every district. So that's why we pick and choose whatever meeting, tell your friends to come to whichever meeting, it's going to be the same presentation everywhere. So the second question we have is community development block grant funds were used to develop Bunch Park, which is a recreation center located in the Carver Heights neighborhood. So the improvements to this park included trees, trail connections, and pavilions. And you can see the before and after picture, you can make that out. The top was how it looked before, the bottom after, and you can see quite a few improvements there, some beautification, signage, some pedestrian walkways, trail connections, and you name it. So A, B, or C, something like this in your neighborhood, some type of improvement along this line, which would be a high priority, a moderate priority, or a low priority in your area. Robert will tell us when everything's in.
Three more.
Three more. All right, so it looks like 18% of you thought it was a high priority, 36% of you thought it was a moderate priority, and most of you thought that 45% approximately thought that a project like this would be more of a lower priority in your neighborhood or community. Next question. Okay, the City of Fort Worth completed through the American with Disabilities Act improvements at Northside Community Center, North Tri-Atlantic, Tri-Ethnic Community Center, Worth Heights Community Center. And these included everything from ramps, rails, anything that made the sites more accessible for the handicapped community or disabled community. And so we'd like to know from you, what priority level should ADA improvement projects be considered in your community? Voting A, B, or C, high, moderate, or low. Is there? I wrote one more. Good, all right. So all the votes are in, and it looks like 36% of you feel that this is a high priority, 45% of you feel it's moderate, and 18% feel it's a lower level priority. Thank you for that. Next question. Next question is, so we're wondering about a HUD grant funding that comes for allocation to AIDS outreach, people living with HIV. That's a special grant fund that HUD provides. So currently the city allocates funding to AIDS Outreach Center, which is abbreviated AOC, to provide short-term rental assistance, mortgage and utilities assistance, and other supportive services for people living with HIV. And we'd like to know from you, what priority level should similar programs be considered in your community? Would you view that as a high priority need, a moderate priority need, or a low priority need? Okay, great. So we've got 27% of you feeling that it's a high priority need, 73% believe this is a moderate level priority, and yeah, so you see it as a high and moderate priority need in your community. Thank you for that. Next question. The city provides community development block grant funds to the Center for Transforming Lives, Easter Seals of North Texas, the Ladder Alliance, and the Women's Center of Tarrant County. And this is really for workforce development, including everything related to employment services, including building your skills, different types of training, and employment services. And so we'd like to know from you, what priority level should similar programs be considered in your community? Again, this is for workforce development type of programs. High priority, moderate priority, or low priority? Okay. What was that again? Just to get those stats. That one fast. Okay. So we said 54% think that this is a high priority for workforce development. 38% feel it's a moderate priority, and 8% of you feel it's a lower priority. Thank you. Next question. Okay, also another program provided with CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant funds, and that was to fund food bank type of services. This was for the Tarrant Area Food Bank Red Bus Program. And that program provides emergency food distribution, nutrition education, and assistance for enrollment in federal benefits programs such as SNAP, TANF, CHIP, and Medicaid. So in looking at this, what level priority should similar programs be considered in your community? Should be a high priority, a moderate priority, or a low priority? Just FYI, for that particular one, that went really fast, but go back to that. These programs provided about 83,000 pounds of food to about 6,561 people at 6 different locations that lacked food pantries and affordable food options. So 71% of you feel that this is a high priority in your community. 21% moderate, and 7% see it as a low priority. Next question. All right, we're getting into street improvements. City of Fort Worth completed street and sidewalk improvements at West Canty, which is located near the northern boundary of Fire Station 10, and that includes street reconstruction, replacement of curb, gutter, and sidewalks, making it ADA accessible first on the sidewalks, adding ramps at all street intersections. So again, this falls in the category of infrastructure. What priority level should similar projects be considered in your community? High, medium, and low. And so, getting those in, is everything in? Okay, all of them are in. So again, you'll find that this is a high priority need. 57% of you feel that this is a high priority. 36% view it as a moderate priority, and 7% see this as a lower priority. Okay, so many of you might be familiar with this program. The Stop 6 Neighborhood Transformation Plan was a city-funded project with programs attached to it that intended to provide better housing conditions, improve the quality of life for families, and encourage neighborhood reinvestment opportunities in the Stop 6 neighborhood. So we'd like to know, in your opinion, how beneficial is a project like this to Fort Worth residents? Again, it's the expenditure on the plan and the programming. So is it very beneficial, somewhat beneficial, or not beneficial? Okay, 85% of you feel that a program such as this is very beneficial to the community, with 8% feeling it's somewhat beneficial and 8% feeling it's not as beneficial to you. Next question. Okay, James mentioned earlier the Las Vegas Trail Transformation Plan, which some of you may have heard of. Again, it's a city-funded project that intended to provide better housing conditions, improve overall quality of life for families, and neighborhood reinvestment opportunities in the Las Vegas Trails neighborhood. So, in your opinion, how beneficial is this project to Fort Worth? This involved the Como Community Center, a state-of-the-art building, providing a lot of interesting spaces, recreational spaces, and social services and emergency services for the area. Okay, all in. So 57% of you see a program such as this, a plan and program is 57% very beneficial to you. 43% see it as somewhat beneficial, and we have 0% seeing it as not beneficial. So you see the value in this. Thank you. We've got something, a citywide program called the Home Buyer Assistance Program, providing down payment assistance to first-time home buyers. How beneficial is something like this to you? Very, somewhat, or not beneficial? Already on. Okay. Good, all right. So 85% of you feel that Home Buyer Assistance Program is a beneficial program, with 15% of you feeling that it's somewhat beneficial. This definitely helps us, again, find out what's important to you. Then we have the city funds this housing rehabilitation program that James and Sharon talked about a little bit. There's also the Cowtown Brescia program, Preserve a Home, various home repair programs, healthy homes for seniors, and a lead-safe program. Tell us what you think about how beneficial programs such as these are. Again, this is a citywide program. Again, if you have any questions about these programs, city staff is here to answer those after the meeting. So it looks like 85% of you find that a program such as this, these housing rehab programs, are very helpful, so very beneficial, followed by 15% of you see these as somewhat beneficial. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn everything back over to James. All of your input has been calculated and be considered as part of the public involvement record.
We're going to try and get you closed out now. If you have any more detailed questions before you leave, we'll be available, both the staff and those of us up here. So if you have any questions, you can ask us. First of all, thank you all for your input. And second of all, this is not the only input, so if you didn't scan the QR code and fill out the survey, we encourage you to do that. I'll give you an example. Part of this whole process that we're going through to get your input and the research that goes into these programs, when you saw the slide of the Stock 6 community, that was a grant outside of the 13 million. That was a competitive grant in which the city of Fort Worth applied for it, and they were one of less than 10 cities to receive it. And that one project got them awarded $30 million beyond the regular grant fund. So your input and the research that we gave through this process isn't just for that $13 million. It's for any competitive grants nationally that we can compete for and receive. So thank you for your participation. If you have any additional questions, feel free to ask us. Want to pick up